Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Door to Door. I'm Virginia Stanley, and today I'm joined with a very special guest, Don Winslow. Don Winslow, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with librarians and with me today.
Thanks for having me. Thank you for taking the time.
Sure, my honor, truly.
Mine.
I want to start by saying that, of course, you can see that my Library Love Fest mates, Chris Connolly and Lainey Mays, are out today. I'm joined by Michael Finan. I don't know that you can. There he is. There's Michael Finan.
There's Michael. Hi, Michael.
Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain.
Oh, we can't not pay attention to you. Some of you may recognize Michael Finan because he's been to many American Library Association conferences and he adores librarians and going to that show. And so you've seen him, assisting with author signings and or pouring bottles of wine into your glasses at the HarperCollins booth. Anyway, that's Michael, and he'll be handling the tech and questions. So please write in questions if you have them for Mr. Don Winslow. And Mickey, thank you again. Okay. So I wanted to get started with a brief intro, and there's really no way to do a brief intro for Don Winslow because you've done so much, but we'll try. Don Winslow, author of 22 acclaimed award-winning international bestsellers, including the New York Times bestsellers, The Force and The Border, and the #1 international bestseller, of course, The Cartel, The Power of the Dog, Savages, The Winter of Frankie Machine. Savages was made into a feature film by Oliver Stone, and The Power of the Dog, The Cartel, and The Border were sold to FX to air as a major TV series. You are a former investigator, anti-terrorist trainer, and trial consultant. I don't know how you do everything that you do, but I love that you do. And I love that you've written these books because they are absolutely amazing. And we're so thrilled to have you here.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here. Absolutely.
So you split your time between California. I don't know if you split it evenly, but you split your time between California and Rhode Island, which is where you are now, and which is where your new book, City on Fire, takes place.
Yeah.
Though not in this time, it's in the 80s and 90s. And it's first novel in this epic crime saga about Irish and Italian crime syndicates in America. And it'll blow your hair back. I think I said to Bill Ott today from Booklist, it's kind of like a Dyson vacuum. It just sucks you in and you cannot stop reading. You. Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever had that comparison before. But
I have not had that comparison before. I appreciate that. Please.
So I'll let you go, and then we'll trip back into memory lane just for a second before we move forward to talk about the book.
Yeah, listen, first of all, I'd just like to say hello to all the librarians. I think I've said this before, so if I'm repeating myself, please bear with me. Libraries mean so much to me. My mom was a librarian for 25 years here in this little New England town. And, I owe everything to libraries, and I mean that because growing up as a kid, we didn't have a lot of money. There was not a lot of money, to go buy books, and I would go to my mom's library, tiny little place, this little fishing town, and it opened the world up to me. I knew that if I went down a certain aisle and turned right, I'd be in history. If I walked 2 more aisles down, there'd be all these wonderful novels. If I needed to look at a map, if I needed to do geography, it was always there. And so books always meant so much to me and so much to my family and librarians. And when we think about libraries, I think, and then I'll shut up. I don't want to make a speech, but how revolutionary the idea of the free public lending library was, because prior to that, knowledge was the domain of the rich. When the public lending library came in, everybody had access to knowledge, to books, to news, to magazines, to whatever. And I think that has been maybe one of the most underestimated contributors to democracy, when you really look at it. So anyway, end of speech, but it's always nice to be with librarians. So thank you for having me.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time today, and also back on March 23rd of 2020, which was the inaugural episode of this show, which we're calling Door to Door.
Yeah.
So our doors at HarperCollins shuttered on March 12th. We didn't go back.
Mhm.
And on the 23rd, we started this thing called Zoom. And, we didn't even know what Zoom was.
Yeah.
But that was our first episode, and you were our first author. And
Wow.
you told your book was just about to come out. It was Broken, which was
Mhm.
your collection of
Yeah.
novellas.
Yeah.
And you came on to talk to us and talk to librarians about not only the book, which was wonderful, and it received such great reviews, but also about what you just spoke of, your childhood, your mom, and your dial-a-book, which I loved. You call the library from home.
A
and say,
library from home. Yeah. Bring
Yeah.
a book home. Yeah.
You also told a story, and we won't go into it because what we've done is put the link to this video
okay.
in the chat room so people can go back and watch this. It's on YouTube, but you also talk about, with great emotion, about the fire that took place in your when your community in Southern California had put together gotten together enough funding with the county to put together a library, and then there was this devastating fire.
Yeah.
And what you said about your community and about what the library meant to you, what it represented, was so powerful. And again, it's there to watch later on. So if anybody wants to do that, but I want to thank you for coming on then. And I think you can see that we're all sort of like, I don't know what's happening in the world. And you were lovely. You were just lovely, not only to talk about your books, but to talk to librarians and to truly show how much they meant to you. And it was just so heartfelt. And in fact, you had said, without librarians, I would not be a writer.
Oh, no question about it. No question about it. Because I wouldn't have had access to books. That's plain and simple. Did not grow up with money. We were fine. I wasn't poor, but it's not like we could just go out to bookstores and buy books. And so having that library there was the equivalent of having the world there.
Right.
Before I ever went to Africa, before I ever went to Europe, before I ever went to China, physically, I went there up here, because I could go to that little building and go to China, go to Africa, go to Europe, and not only travel geographically, but travel in time. What a revolutionary concept that is, right?
Yep.
You not only get to go to England, pick your year.
Your year.
Yeah,
right.
Go anytime you want by cruising down those narrow aisles. And so there's no question in my mind, without that little library, I would not be doing this job.
Librarians, take note, and we salute you, because the effects that libraries have on young readers who often become writers, I mean, it informed your life, and we're the better for it. So I bow to all of you, to librarians, and to Don Winslow. So there we go.
Here's to librarians everywhere.
Yes, indeed. Okay, just want to go back to that book, Broken, for 1 second.
Sure.
Booklist gave it a star review and said, after 3 epic scale masterpieces, The Cartel, that was in 2015, The Force, 2017, The Border, 2019, Winslow returns with a delicious serving of small plates, a greatest hits album, but with all new melodies. What could be sweeter?
It's very
I love
nice.
that.
Yeah, I do too. It's fun because I thought of the book as an album. I really did. I thought of it as a music album in the way that it was structured and which story came where, so that it had, this sort of opening tune, and then there was sort of a closing tune that sort of matched it. And then in between, we played a lot of different kinds of tunes and different rhythms and different tones. So I very much thought of it as a musical album.
I bet it must have been maybe, I don't know. I mean, not that any of this could possibly be, I didn't really want to say easy, but I mean, these I think you call them marathons, writing the trilogy and writing the
Yeah.
cartel, and then, oh my goodness. But then to shift a little bit to a different style, but they're not short stories, they're novellas. So they're,
Yeah, yeah. I don't know if I'm capable of writing short stories. I might just be a little too verbose, but uh, yeah, it was the difference between a marathon and a 10K. In the sense that in the big drug books, which are I call them my Magnus Opus, by the way, a little cheap little pun.
great. I love that.
You got up every morning knowing you had miles to run, and that the next morning you got up knowing you had miles to run, and that at some point in time it would stop. With the novellas, it was, now I'm going to get up and I'm going to run fast.
Mm.
And very often during writing those, I'd write on 2 or 3 a day. I'd write a page or two
yeah.
of one, and then go, yep, fun, goodbye, yep, next. Let me advance the story a few hundred yards now. Oh,
Right.
next one, I'll go there. So it was a lot of fun doing that.
Good. That's good.
Now I'm back to the other thing. Now I'm back to marathon.
Now back to marathons.
Yeah.
My goodness. I hope you got
Yeah.
yourself a new pair of New Balance, because this is amazing.
I do. Yeah.
So, okay. New book coming out in September.
So I'm told. Yep.
Oh my goodness, please. So let's get to it. City on Fire.
Yeah.
My brain's on fire after reading this book. And the raves are pouring in. And I actually don't think that I don't want to call them raves. I think they're love. I think they're reverence. I think there's such a great appreciation for what you've given us on the pages of this book. It's true. You've got Stephen King says there's one word for this book: superb. You've got the stars are shining brightly for City on Fire. You've got starred reviews from Kirkus and from Publishers Weekly, and then just in Today, which is coming out into the August issue of Booklist. This completely immersive opening act signals a trilogy in the offing that will possess all the power of Winslow's celebrated cartel novels. That's Bill Ott, who is the former editor and publisher of Booklist, and
legend. Yeah.
Legend. Yes.
These 3 books have a long and old genesis. Years ago, realizing how uneducated I really was, so I have a very narrow education, it's true, in African history and military history. I put myself on one of those great book lists. I didn't put myself on, I started reading one of those great book lists. And I read it. It took me 6 years, I think, from beginning to end. And so this autodidactic kind of effort. But of course, very early in that came the Greek and Roman classics. And as I was reading them, it struck me like thunderclap how similar some of the great stories in Greek and Roman literature were to true crime stories that I grew up with here in New England. And I went, oh my God, that's like Helen of Troy. That's like the Orestes cycle. And so it germinated for years and years, and I would go back and I'd sort of type on it, but then I'd move on, to more things. And then finally, when I finished the big drug trilogy that you were kind enough to mention, and finished Broken, I thought, you know what, I'm going to sit down and give this a whack. Can you take the great themes of classical literature and meld them with the great themes of contemporary crime fiction? Because that's what I am. I'm a crime writer, no bones about it, right? I'm definitely a genre guy. And so I gave it a shot, and this is the first volume of what will be a trilogy that takes some of these ancient stories and combines them with some true stories and some made up stories from my upbringing, and here we are.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the setting that you've chosen.
Mhm.
So you've set your books in Mexico and California,
Everywhere. Yeah.
everywhere.
Everywhere.
And now you've gone back to where your childhood stomping ground.
Mhm.
And I had read that you had, this has been, you said this is a long time in the making.
Mhm.
And I wondered, well, I want you to talk more about the book, and I'm going to leave that to you because, as I said to you before, I'm so afraid to say something I shouldn't say and spoil things.
Yeah.
So I'd love you to talk about the framework of the book, the time, the setting,
Mhm.
um, and these characters that are just so, boy, they come right off the page. I feel like, I felt like sometimes I was reading a Dennis Lehane book, and then sometimes I felt like I was reading The Perfect Storm when they're all going off and loading up the
Yeah.
boats. There's the sea, there's
Yeah.
there's the blue collar sort of working class, and there's family, and there's just so much happening here, and it all rings. It's so compelling. It's so hard to stop. There's not a good place to stop. I'm going to stop talking, and I'm going to turn it to you. I would love for you to let them know what you want them to know.
Well, thank you. Life's funny, isn't it? You go a long way away around the world to come home. We started coming back here to Rhode Island largely to look after my mom, who was, quite elderly. And I would go down to this particular beach about every day because I surf and I body surf and that kind of stuff, and have forever, grew up here. And I started to see these stories. It's impossible to read the Odyssey or the Iliad without a relationship to the ocean.
Mm.
you know and so there'd be days when I'd be looking out at that ocean and I'd be dreaming up these crime stories that ran parallel to what was being said in the Iliad and the Odyssey and the Oresteia and some of the Greek tragedies, and then later on, the Iliad. And so the books follow a character that, he's a minor player in the Trojan Wars. And in the Iliad, but then he moves on into Virgil, and carries through and travels and eventually founds the Republic of Rome. And at one point, he goes into a cave. It's not in this book, but in the next one, and sees images of himself painted. Well, to me, that was just like Hollywood. So my character is on a film set making a movie about the first book and sees an actor playing him and sees the sets from his childhood and his youth and things that were happening in book one, and he eventually has to go and found an empire, as the character does, Aeneas does in Virgil's Aeneid, of course. And I thought, where could my guy, having started as a sort of minor league thief in Rhode Island, end up with an empire? And the answer was Las Vegas. And so off we go, in the third book, the concluding volume, to Las Vegas. To talk, and when I'm reading, Virgil's Aeneid, I'm seeing the parallels, between building empires and building gambling empires, and the rivalries and the wars, and Las Vegas's crime history. But in this book, it all takes place in Rhode Island, and with a war that breaks out between the Irish and Italian mobs, which was the stuff of my childhood. When I would pick up a newspaper when I was a kid, that those were the headlines. There was this shooting at this restaurant, and you knew these people. It's a very small state. So that's really was the origin of it. I feel like I'm, rambling a little bit, babbling a little bit, but I wanted to see listen, I've often thought that when crime fiction writers like me, and clearly that's what I am, when we look back to our roots, we look back to Raymond Chandler and, you know, Agatha Christie, and maybe we go a little farther back and we go to A. Conan Doyle and Sherlock Holmes and all that. But I never thought that we went back far enough.
Hmm.
You know, that if we go back a little further and we look at Dickens, right? We see these great crime stories. And then if we keep pushing it back and back and back, and then you get to the Greek and Roman epics, the themes are all the same. It's about honor and dishonor and loyalty and betrayal and greed and lust and power and theft and war. All the themes that we find in the modern gang, you know, novel are all there. They're just all there for us. And so I've been harvesting those vines, I guess.
I guess we don't really change, do we?
No,
The names change.
the names change, you know, the vehicles change, I guess, the clothing
Yeah.
changes,
Mhm.
you know, but what I'm really hoping for is that someone who picks up this book with no knowledge of
Right.
Greek or Roman
Yeah.
literature,
Don't need
myths
it.
and things, would go, oh, this is a really cool crime novel, you know, and I
Right.
like it a lot. That was my aim. You could have no reference to these things, and I hope, and I think, really enjoy this book. But then if you do have that sort of other perspective, I'm not saying you should, but if you do, then you might look at this book and say, oh, wow, you know, am I looking at Odysseus there? You know?
Yeah.
Is that Helen of Troy? Is this, you know, and
Aphrodite.
Aphrodite, because every character in this book has an analogous character in Greek and Roman mythology.
Yeah, they're really so those characters are just so perfectly drawn. And you know, it becomes more apparent now that, you know, when it's I can see it now, you know,
Well, thank you. Yeah.
when she's coming out of the water, this woman is coming out of the water, and Danny sets his sights on her and says, what? And his wife says, I see you checking her out, and she's just absolutely beautiful. And then there's layer one and layer
Helen
two
of
as well.
Troy. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You know, yeah, it's funny. I mean, it's the milieu that I grew up in.
Yeah.
You know, I knew
And
these guys, you know.
Yeah. Well,
Surfed with these guys, you know,
right.
out for pizza with these guys, you know. And so that milieu and that voice, once I started coming back to Rhode Island more often, started to become very natural to me again, having spent years in California. And my wife says, although I would argue with this, that when I get really tired, my New England accent starts to come back.
I wanted to ask you about that. I heard that somewhere, that you started to go back into your Rhode Island.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah. So, you know, Bobby becomes Bobby, and, you know, I start dropping R's, and, you know, that kind of thing. The more fish and chips I eat and clam cakes I gobble down.
I do. Well, you know, there's so much to the there's the story, there's the plot line, there are the characters and the setting, and there's also a lot of a treat for the senses, because there's the smell of the sea, there's the food that plays into this, there's your issue with corn chowder, not corn chowder, clam chowder.
Yeah, I have an issue with it. Yeah.
No, my goodness, nobody give Don Winslow Manhattan clam chowder. No red,
never.
no cream.
It's an abomination unto the Lord. Sam Sifton and I of the New York Times agree on this, by the way. I was very pleased reading one of his columns where he had the legitimate New England clam chowder in the clear broth, which only exists now, as far as I know, in the small sliver in Rhode Island.
And you put it in the book.
I put it in the book. I'm a believer. I live for that stuff, you know.
Yeah.
I used to come out of the water, you know, sometimes surfing into the evening, and I'm in my wetsuit, and I just walk over to Jim's dock, and the waitresses all knew me. So I'd stand outside shivering, you know, it's like October, November, and they'd give me, you know, they'd go in and get me a big container of real clam chowder. Oh God, you know, I'm like freezing, and it was
Oh,
so
that's so great.
so good. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
What was it like? I mean, so you said that the the chapter, I think it was the first couple chapters, you were in a drawer or in your computers, and you take it out and you put it back. And what was it, Don? What was it that finally when you go, okay, I'm ready?
Confidence, maybe. I think. Listen, I've written a couple of books now, and so it's a bit odd, isn't it? I think in a way it takes more confidence to come home than it does to travel. In some
Mhm.
ways, my books have been set all around the world, a lot on the West Coast, a lot in Mexico.
Mm.
I've been around the world in various jobs, and uh, uh, always, though, a little shy to come home with it. And I think it took the experience of being here. It took the experience of loss, I
Yeah.
think, to say, yeah, I think I'm ready to tackle this,
Wow.
and to hopefully do it right. Whereas I think if I'd tried it 10, 20 years ago, I think I would have really messed it up.
Mm.
Now maybe I
Right.
have. I'm the last one to judge that, but uh, I think it just felt right at that moment in my career to say,
Hmm.
okay, I'm going to go home. I'm going to spend more time here physically, and then also spend more time here mentally and creatively, and try to recreate that world in this book. You know, this very kind of small slice. I mean, I'm literally a mile from where this book starts, right? And I'll be there 20 minutes after our interview is
Is
over.
that right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll be right at that spot where the
Yeah.
book begins. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that takes a great amount of I don't know, strength, I think, and bravery to know when you're ready and then to do it, and you've done it. And I am sorry for your loss, because
Oh,
you
thank
did,
you. Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
um,
Look, I mean, every book's a jump into the dark, isn't it? I think, when we start writing a book, we might have one or two sentences in mind, and then you're just jumping off a cliff,
mm,
and hopefully into some sort of soft landing. And not
mhm.
always, Lord knows I've started books that it turned out to be really horrible, and never get finished, and should not be finished. But
Well,
but this one almost felt inevitable to me.
right,
I felt that I had the voice and I knew the people.
right.
And then I had this constant stream of inspiration from thousands of years ago, that said, when you run out of ideas, ask Homer,
Wow, that's
ask
amazing.
Aeschylus, ask, those guys, ask Virgil. Go to those sources, and what do they have to tell you? And it was funny, because there were times, and I've read various translations of those books numerous times now, and so there are times when I'd read them and they were meaningless to me, and other times I'd go back to them and go, aha,
Yep, yep,
there's my answer. It was in front of me all the time. I just wasn't ready to get it.
right.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have questions from librarians, but can you just talk a little bit about, without going too much into it, but what was happening between I mean, there are just some wonderful characters. I love Danny. I just think that
Oh,
he's
thank
such a
you.
great. But can you just sort of give everybody who's watching just sort of a little
Yeah,
framework?
sure.
You've got your Irish, you've got your Italian, you've got
Yeah.
this time and place. What's going on? And then
Yeah.
we'll go to questions.
Rhode Island in New England is a very, very small place, and the Irish and Italian mobs historically, out of Providence, Rhode Island, knew each other, and in Boston as well, in New England generally, and they for many years cooperated, and then it fell apart over a woman. Uh, and when I read the real life incident of what had happened on a beach between Irish and Italian mobsters that ignited a 10-year war, the Iliad, uh, I thought, wow, but that's what happened. And that was, of course, an excuse. I mean, the real reason for any gang war is economic. And, you know, people want what other people have. And there was a constant struggle over unions and various kinds of gambling and loan sharking, turf and that kind of thing. But what happens in the book is that there is a beach party, which is a true story. And one of the Irish guys who's in his cups is quite rude physically. I'm trying to be polite here, to one of the Italian guy's girlfriends, and basically assaults her. And the Italian mobsters beat him up very badly. And then the Irish feel a need to answer, and it gets out of control. And that's actually a true story. So I've known that story since childhood. So there, not at the party, but, you know, around. And so when I read the Iliad for the first time, I went, whoa. Huh, what if this woman who was accosted on the beach ends up with the guy who accosted her and touches off a gang war? And again, that's the excuse, as I think Helen of Troy was an excuse, you know, to fight over wealth and riches and land and all of that kind of thing. And so that was the primary idea behind this book, but I didn't want to do it from the point of view of one of the major players. I wanted to come in a little bit from the side.
Yeah.
You know, because I find those people a bit more interesting sometimes. You know, I've always thought, you know, point the compass at true north and then kick it a little bit, you know. And so I picked a minor character, you know, from the Iliad, Aeneas, and made him the center of the story, because then I knew that I could follow him over the next 20 years, you know. But I follow a lot of these guys, you know, in the next two books over their wanderings and what happens with them. Was that the question you asked me?
Yeah. I mean,
Rambling,
it's just, it makes me want to go back and read it again, honestly, you know, because it's, I don't know. It's just such a great story. And the character development is just so wonderful. And it takes this one thing, you know, like they sort of get along.
Yeah,
You know,
they're friends.
they do the loading dock, the docks, and
Yeah.
the, you know, and this is sort of separate but equal,
Yeah.
sort of,
Yeah.
but not really. And then this one thing lights that
Yeah.
flame, and boom, and the
Boom.
elder, you know,
Yeah.
big, you know,
Yeah, it
the
just
big chiefs are like, cool it.
they're
and
trying to settle it down, and they
Yeah.
can't do it. They can't get
Yeah,
it done
no.
eventually, you know.
Oh God, it's so good.
Well, thank you very much. You're very kind.
Oh my goodness gracious, it's.
So.
I can't wait to see what happens next.
Do you want me
All
to
right.
read a bit?
I would love for you to read a bit, and then we'll
Just
do
a
some
short
questions.
bit, and then we'll do questions. Does that work
Sure.
for you?
Yep, that works great.
This requires glasses, unfortunately, because, you know.
We all feel ya.
So this is just the first few words of the book. Danny Ryan watches the woman come out of the water like a vision emerging from his dreams of the sea. Except she's real and she's going to be trouble. Women that beautiful usually are. Danny knows that. What he doesn't know is just how much trouble she's really going to be. If he knew that, knew everything that was going to happen, he might have walked into the water and held her head under until she stopped moving. But he doesn't know that. So the bright sun striking his face, Danny sits on the sand out in front of Pasco's beach house and checks her out from behind the cover of his sunglasses. Blonde hair, deep blue eyes, and a body that the black bikini does more to accentuate than conceal. You don't see her 15 years from now with wide hips and a big butt from the potatoes and the Sunday gravy. The woman comes out of the water, her skin glistening with sunshine and salt. So just a little bit there.
Helen of Troy, yes?
Helen of Troy. Yeah.
Oh boy. All right. So I think everybody has the basic idea of this book. Some have already read the book. There's great love. May I start? Don, is there anything? Can I?
No, I'm good.
jump in?
I am your slave. So whatever you'd like. I am your servant.
All right. So this is from Katie Stover from the Kansas City Public Library, who says that she is your #1 Neil Carey fan.
Oh,
by the
that's
way.
nice. Thank you.
So I think she's loved City on Fire, a blend of Godfather by Mario Puzo, Mystic River by Dennis Lehane, and your own The Force. Well, and so of course she knows that this begs a sequel, and of course that's coming. But you do tell us right up front that City on Fire is inspired by Greek literature. So we've talked about this a bunch, but which of the ancient Greek stories did you like the most as a young reader?
Definitely the Iliad.
Okay.
Action packed, as a young reader, that's what you want. You want the action, you want
Yeah.
all of that. If I had to answer that now, it would be the Oresteia, Aeschylus's trilogy of, plays,
Okay.
which are also encompassed in these books.
Mhm.
And so, you change over your life, but
Right.
originally I can remember as a kid, you'd get those kid versions,
Yeah.
these kids illustrated versions of these things, and God bless, and yeah, the Iliad, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So thanks, Katie, for that question. Bill Ott, of course, former editor and publisher of
Of
Hopeless,
course.
and
Hi, Bill.
wonderful contributing editor, and wrote that wonderful review that we just got today. As you embark on a trilogy, do you have a story arc in mind for all 3 volumes? And if so, is there a chance one or more of the characters might grab you by the lapels and push you in a new direction?
No and yes. When I did the drug trilogy, I had no clue really what was going to happen, except that I was following reality. I was following the real story, and that provided somewhat of a path. But there were times in that trilogy when characters would completely surprise me. I'd become very fond of them and go with that story, or characters that I thought were going to be major turned out to be kind of dull people, and I didn't want to hang out with them. So with this, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You start writing what you think is going to be a small character, and yet he or she, actually in the case I'm thinking about, but I don't want to give it away, grabs you in such a way and starts to work that they demand to be written, you know. And so you write those chapters and then figure it out, what it's done to your book later.
It's funny.
So yeah, absolutely, Bill.
Thank you. And Jennifer Winberry, our good friend Jennifer Winberry from New Jersey, librarian. She says, we've answered the first part of the question, which is what made you decide to go home and finish the book, and I think that we've done that. She says the book is set in 1986. Do you consider this historical fiction, and was it hard to keep modern day references out of it, even inadvertently?
I would not consider it historical fiction. I would consider it just purely fiction, although certain incidents are certainly inspired by real events, such as the beach party that I alluded to. I've already forgotten the second half of the question. I'm sorry.
The second half of the question was it hard to keep modern day references
Yes.
out? Was it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, because I had to do a whole reading of the manuscript to make sure I didn't have those anachronisms in there, because obviously we live in the present, and as much as you try to be historically accurate, you're going to mess it up sometimes. And so, I have very good editors who will point this stuff out to me. God bless them,
Right.
but also I did my own read of the finished manuscript to try to avoid anachronisms. We'll see.
Yeah, I can't
Yeah.
even imagine.
Yeah.
My goodness.
And plus, there was a sort of COVID world and pre-COVID world,
Yeah.
and it was sometimes difficult, sitting in that COVID world to kind of launch yourself mentally back into the pre-COVID sorts of existence. I start the book at a beach party. Oh, we can't do that.
Right. Right.
It's like, what did beach parties look like? It's amazing how quickly the abnormal becomes normal,
Oh my God, you're so right.
So so there was that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Janet Lockhart has written in a question, but I feel like we've answered that as well. yes, you're a fan of Greek epics and tragedies, and they were an influence on your novels. Maureen, I believe this is Maureen Roberts. I'm going to get over to our Facebook page. But at what point in the writing process did you know this would be the start of a trilogy?
Before I started writing it,
Ooh,
I really did. Um, I knew that if I was going to follow this character, that it was going to be a trilogy. Uh, because if I took the character of Aeneas, the character of Danny Ryan in the book, I knew I was going to take him on quite a trip. Now, I tend to write long books, but I thought if I did that in one volume, that's going to be too long even for me, and so I decided to make it a trilogy. But
right.
yeah, I think before I typed the first words, I knew that it was going to be a trilogy. It was just such a natural, to take this New England fisherman mobster, then to take him to Hollywood, in the second book, where he's seeing images. He meets the actor that plays him and falls in love with the woman playing Helen of Troy.
Right.
And so that was irresistible, the second I read about the murals painted on the cave walls in Carthage, in the Aeneid, I knew that was going to be Hollywood. It had to be, images on a big wall, and then Las Vegas. So I've always known this was a trilogy.
Let's see. Okay, Carol Fitzgerald from the Book Reporter, who I believe has interviewed you before. She is absolutely wonderful. Question 1. Are you thinking about the pacing of the trilogy to have high spots in each?
Yes. Yes, thank you. Sure. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the critical trick here, is I have to be very aware that I'm writing crime novels. Despite their inspiration, they have to absolutely stand alone as crime novels. So if somebody came to this book and knew nothing about Greek or Roman mythology, which is probably maybe most people, and it was just fine, they had to stand alone. And so I had to find those moments in the epics. And then, and this sounds terribly egotistical, but I'll let it stand, make them my own, write them fresh, find new incidents and all of that. So yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Another question from Carol, and she does say that, yes, she interviewed you virtually last year as part of a big virtual tour for you.
Yeah.
Are you going to be touring for this book?
That's my understanding. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So wonderful. I mean, goodness, it's, things change and change again. But I think there's, I know that there's a huge value. Of course, authors who have published right at the time of the pandemic up until now. I mean, many of them, especially, debut novelists.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's been tough.
It's tough. It's tough. It's tough for all of you. I mean, it really is. I mean, let's face it. Debut novelists aren't going to have this whirlwind tour, but they would be going out there and having
Right.
that experience.
Yeah.
But there is, thank God for Zoom, which I didn't even know
Yeah.
what that was on March 22nd.
You and me both. Yeah, I started, I was scheduled to go out with Broken, and the shutdown came on that day, and so I was doing this, and now I feel reasonably comfortable with it, but it's still weird.
Yeah.
It's like the old Star Trek episode. Remember we used to watch Star Trek and we thought how cool it was. Like they'd push some buttons and people would appear on a big screen and they'd talk to each other or threaten each other or whatever, Now we're here, Captain Kirk. I mean,
Who knew?
this is our lives. Yeah.
I know. Very strange. Very
Yeah.
strange. I do have a sort of it's a question from Casey Davis. This is not book related, but I would like to ask this of you. She is
Sure.
asking, recently there has been a real push to the gut to gut libraries from the inside out, from politicians who want to strip them of funds which in turn helps the communities they serve. Since you are very open politically, I love your movies, by the way.
Thank
So
you.
do I. What do you think communities can do to prevent these crimes from happening? And is there anything authors can do to help?
Yeah, absolutely, both. First of all, speak out. First of all, go to the library, by the way.
Yeah.
Listen, libraries are evolving and shifting, and their roles are evolving
Yeah.
and shifting, becoming more meeting places and lecture places. But when you live in rural communities, as I have and do, whether it's in Rhode Island here in our little old New England town, or I live way out in the boonies in California on an old ranch, that library is a center of the community, flat out, period. And so, sure, here's what we can do, right? Be aware, speak out, write those congressmen, talk, because they do listen to that. Uh, Libraries play such a critical role. We live in California in a very rural area. Some of the bus rides are over an hour for kids way out in the desert. For them to be able to study, for them to have access to computers and all of that kind of thing, that means that library. End of story, period. And so we went out and did all kinds of fundraising, to get that library built and to keep it going. So yeah, we just need to speak out and make sure that the people who want to cut these budgets know that these libraries are valuable on so many levels. And once they're lost, they're gone. And it's only then that we're going to feel the real cultural and societal poverty that would mean.
Well, you are living proof. I mean, you've walked the walk, having joined forces with your community members to get that library up and running.
Listen, I remember when that library opened, half the community was still in ashes. People were living, in cars, and we were all communal. I think it was 4 or 5 months before we cooked a meal just for our family, right? Because wherever you'd be when the power went out, that's where you stayed. There's no power for a long time. And I remember, like it was yesterday, to employ a cliche, the day that library opened. And the feeling of what that meant to the communities, like we're still here. And we have a place to be together, and there's still culture, and there's still going to be talks and lectures and books, and yes, computers for the kids to cross the parking lot from the school to use, which was absolutely critical at that point, So yeah, obviously I'm a big supporter.
Yeah.
But that's what we do. We speak out, and we have to claim our turf, and we have to say, hey, this is valuable to us. This is a valuable space, a valuable place. It means something to us, and we'll fight for it.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, the fire that you're referencing, I don't know, it took 700 and something thousand acres.
Yeah.
Again, if you want to go back and watch the Facebook Live that we had done, the very first one, door to door, Don, you talk about that fire. I mean, it was, I won't, you can watch it and you'll see, it was just devastating. I mean, lives were lost, but I mean, it's like the library, not to be glib, but it rose out of the ashes.
Well, almost literally, because the fire was roaring that way, and a 2-lane blacktop highway stood between the fire and the library site. And the fire trucks lined up on that highway. And then, my hand to God, it started to rain. 20 more minutes, the library would have been gone, as would the town, by the way. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, just maybe time for one more question here. This is from Vicky Nesting, and she says, your City on Fire comes out in September. How far along are you on the second book of the trilogy?
It's done. I am, well into the third book of the trilogy now. Thanks for asking. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, they're ready. Are you kidding? Katie Stover's already saying, I need the second one.
All right, I'll email it to you. No,
There
no,
you
I
go,
won't.
Katie.
No, hi, HarperCollins. I
Oh,
won't
God in
email. I was
heaven.
just joking.
No, yeah,
but
he's only kidding. No.
only kidding.
You know, I had picked out this one section that there's so much in the book, but I just love the way you talked about this, how the Irish and the Italians, how they coexisted. And that if you don't mind, I just wanted to read this because I just think it's so beautiful. You're
Thank you. Yeah.
more than welcome to read it, but I don't know where it
you.
is in the book.
Yeah.
You said how they had fought each other, these two immigrant tribes, for a place to put their feet. The Irish in Dogtown, the Italians on Federal Hill, toeholds carved out of grudging New England granite. Around the turn of the century, the Italians came from Naples or somewhere and fought the Irish. Two sets of slaves. I love this line. Two sets of slaves battling each other for the crumbs off the master's plate until they finally figured out that together they had the numbers to take the whole table. I just love that. They carved the city up like roast beef, and they were smart enough to leave the old Yankees sufficient slices to keep them fat and happy. They just figured it out. I love that. I love that excerpt.
Thank you. Yeah, listen, you know, I come from one of those old Yankee families, you know, the Mayflower, the whole 9 yards, but grew up in Irish and Italian neighborhoods, and then later in the fishing kind of villages that I write about in the book, you know, so yeah.
Yeah, it's quite sort of survivalist. And I just kind of love the way they coexist until Helena Troy shows up.
Till they don't.
Then they don't.
Till they don't.
Let's see. I think I've gotten hopefully to all the questions. There are links in here. Michael Finan has put the Don Winslow books archives in here. That's fabulous. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Michael.
And the City on Fire book trailer, which is amazing. We could actually show that if you'd like.
Sure.
And also in the link is Don's link to your website, which is just so chock full. I mean, that's a fabulous website. You've really got, you know, there's everything you could possibly want to know to fill in the blanks about not only the books, but the films and the TV, and it's and where you are around the world and how it's wonderful. It's a terrific site. So I encourage everybody to go there, and it is listed there in the chat room. So I think, Michael, can you come back on? Or I don't know if he's.
There's Michael. I see Michael.
You do. Hi, Michael. Hi. Thank you for sharing everything. I just want to make sure we haven't missed anything, that we've gotten everything that we said we wanted to get to. Questions, links. Am I forgetting anything?
Looks like it. Yeah. No, we've got everything. It's in the chat. They're also in the event description. If anyone wants any of that.
Okay. I think. Thank you, Michael, for helping me and for just being wonderful backup. So I think what we'll do is say our goodbyes, but then I'd love to play the book trailer after we say
that'd
goodbye.
Be great. Thank you.
It's so powerful and beautiful.
Yeah,
and,
it's cool. I'm really thrilled.
It's cool.
Yeah.
It's cool. And as long as we've got 2 minutes.
Good. Yeah.
I just want to say again how wonderful, in addition to your books, which are breathtaking and informative, educational, and I don't know. I mean, I learn a lot, but I never feel like I'm being taught. If that sounds.
Well, thank you. That's,
you know what I mean.
That's what I'm going for. So I'm very appreciative of that. Thank you.
And for all your support of librarians, and all that you've done. We are just so grateful and honored to have you here today.
Well, thank you. It
Um,
goes the other way. I mean, for all library supports of me, since I was a child and up through today. So it's a mutual thing. I feel very close to y'all.
And on a side note, I can't help it. I've got to say that I just absolutely am one of millions of people who appreciate your films that you have put out there, your
Oh, thank you.
videos, and for the cause. So speaking the truth. So thank you for those. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Touching so
Yeah.
many lives in so many different ways. So the start of the trilogy, Danny is going to be in City of Dreams in September 22. Is that right?
Mhm. That's right.
City in Ashes in 2023. So we just
Yes. We just wait.
Just wait.
Just wait.
Just you wait, Henry Higgins. But City on Fire goes on sale September 21st. And I know that if you haven't read it, so many people who have already and loved it and are ready for the second one. But enjoy it. I envy anyone who gets to read it for the first time. And Don, is there anything else you want to say before we go to the trailer and then say goodbye?
No, I think I'm good. Thanks for coming. Thanks for your time. Thanks for your time. This has been really fun, just a kind of fun conversation. If you find yourself up in Rhode Island, I know where the good chowder is. So, and I will take you there.
The clear chowder.
The clear chowder, the real chowder, the rest of it.
The real chowder.
The real thing. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much again.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Be well. And Michael, can you play the video now? I think he'll say
Yes,
yes.
let's do it.
I think he said yes.
I think Michael can do anything.
I think he can.
I think he can.
Don, my best to you.
My best back to you. Come see us in Rhode Island.
Would love to. Thank you.
Okay,
And here's
yeah.
Don Winslow,
Thank you.
City on Fire, book
Bye-bye.
trailer. Bye, Don.
Bye-bye.
I've been writing this book for decades. I've picked it up and put it down over the years, but always came back to it. I wanted to go home, to the places of my youth that I'd never written about. Maybe I thought I wasn't ready for that return. Maybe I believed that you can't go home again. Or maybe it was the pain of memory, the lost friendships, the betrayal of who I was and where I came from. My town, my home, my city on fire.
Love it. Thank you again, everyone. And thank you, Don, so much. Wonderful hour. The thrill and the honor is all of ours.
Really fun. Thank you.
Take care, everyone. We'll see you next time. Bye.